Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Today, Thomas, I'd like to look at the FISA Section 702 reauthorization. For some folks, they probably eyes will just get blurry as they look at this and go, oh my God, more words of things that I don't know. But what we're going to do today is make it very clear what this is and what it means for Americans. So what I have in front of me is a joint statement that was released today, December 21st, 2017, from Director of National Intelligence Coates. Wouldn't that be former? Or is he still the...
Still.
He's still? Okay. AG Sessions, a CIA Director Pompeo, FBI Director Wray, and NSA Director Rogers. Okay? So that's who has done it. You've read it over. Let's explain to folks what this is and why we should be paying attention.
Oh, we should be paying attention to this, Betsy. Back in the fall of 2016, when the Inspector General's report on the FISA court came out, it said they were in 100% noncompliance. It said that Comey had basically taken the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act and flushed it down the toilet. He gave absolutely not one single indication of a single person that the FBI counterintelligence agency ever surveilled. In other words, no warrants have ever been pulled since the time that Comey has come to the FBI in any FISA court warrant. That's the reason that I make a joke of, forget about the FISA court warrant. They aren't needed. They're in so pathetic of noncompliance that, in my opinion, they absolutely should not renew it. It's a complicated situation. Let's look at the history of it.
Well, I don't understand then. Why are these people sending out a memo that they're asking that it be renewed? Don't they know that it doesn't work?
They should all be fired. Every one of them that signed that request is ignoring the Inspector General's clear statement that FISA court is in complete non-compliance. With the FBI counterintelligence, 100%. With the NSA and the CIA, they had case after case. We went over this and we wrote reports on this, so there are citizen intelligence reports on this that we have created. And we gave you all the details, and the details are millions of Americans were swept up in the PRISM, the CIA NSA program called PRISM or Stellar Winds. There's many of them. Look at our most recent intelligence report on all the different programs that are being used for surveillance. Because those are being used, it abnegates the entire intent of having a foreign intelligence surveillance court. That court is supposed to, and it started in 1978, to say that they would seek a secret warrant to surveil our enemies in foreign countries. That's the way it started. And then it got completely out of hand. And the Bushes took it too far, kept adding to it, kept amending it, and then after 9/11, it went absolutely insane. And when the U.S. Patriot Act, which was enforced by Robert Mueller, was brought into effect, it was the end of American privacy. For instance, we know that James Clapper just a few years, actually repeatedly, was called before Congress to say, are you, as the Director of National Intelligence, through the CIA, through the FBI counterintelligence or NSA, surveilling Americans? And he said, no, not that we know of, not wittingly. Then Snowden's whistleblowing leaks came out, and he had to come back and say, yeah, I guess, we are surveilling every American and every single device. Now, that continues on. It started to be really bad with the U.S. Patriot Act in 2001. But when Obama came to power in 2008, he added new dimensions to it that made it completely absurd. He added the absolute blanket authority of all 17 intelligence agencies to surveil with or without a FISA court warrant. So it is a moot point when people want to talk about that, was Trump surveilled through Section 702 through the FISA court because they used the Trump dossier as the evidence to get that warrant. That doesn't matter. They surveilled Trump one way or the other. We know that Manafort was being surveilled. We know that Flynn was being surveilled. And we know as specific investigations that may have used a FISA court warrant. But it does not matter. We know that every member of the Trump team was surveilled. He was wiretapped in every imaginable way that word can be twisted
I
up.
think people need to take a moment and just grasp what this means. You live in the United States. This kind of privacy is protected by our U.S. Constitution, and they have ripped this apart so that they can spy on all of us.
We have no privacy. The Fourth Amendment has been, sections of it have been flushed down.
The
toilet.
They treasonously got rid of it. We just have to right that wrong and go back to the rule of law.
James Clapper, again, committed a crime by being on the news and stating that Putin was using Trump as an asset. He said this just last weekend. Okay, he needs to go to jail for that. These types of absurd allegations and accusations are attempts at sedition, attempts at overthrow of a duly elected president. James Clapper was the person who was doing all the surveillance. Why didn't he go to jail for perjury? Why didn't he go to jail for breaking the law? He wrote a similar letter not long before to ask the FISA court to continue, just as they have done before. And they're asking that with that letter now with Jeff Sessions' name on it. Okay, Jeff Sessions is a traitor now.
Really?
He's a traitor.
We have given him the benefit of the doubt. We have waited for some concrete, constructive things to come out of his department. I see nothing. It's been almost a year.
He is so pathetic. He said, when demanded whether he was investigating the Uranium One connection to the Clinton Foundation, he said, "I'm going to put a good lawyer on it." There are 500 lawyers working with Michael Horowitz in the Office of Inspector General for the Department of Justice right now. There were 5,000 people used in the Russian interference report created by James Clapper in the fall of 2016, at the same time that they didn't notice and didn't want to notice that the IG said they were in complete noncompliance. Section 702 doesn't exist. It is an excuse for lawlessness. And the people who put their name on there, sorry to have to say it, Pompeo, I haven't trusted him from the beginning. We got to hear Christopher Wray do nothing but lawyer dodging to the question when he testified. Who else is on there?
Rogers?
Rogers, who, as we know, should have been kicked out along with Clapper. Coates is new, and there's no excuse. He's actually should be responsible for closing down all surveillance.
This memo to me is a slap in the face to the American people who are awake now and see the kind of criminal activity in Washington. They should have just allowed this thing to die and never put forth this.
In 2008, they renewed it under Obama with even wider parameters. And then when it was called into question during this IG investigation in 2015, they went ahead and preempted it by creating the Freedom Act. And the Freedom Act, again, basically usurps all Americans' rights to have any privacy. Same thing as the U.S. Patriot Act did. If you were suspected for any reason, and they didn't have to give a reason, they didn't have to give any evidence, you could be actually taken out of this country, your citizenship could be taken away from you, and you could be sent to Guantanamo Bay simply upon an accusation of someone in the Department of Justice saying that you have some connection to radical Islam and terrorism. So we are in a police state at this point. When those people, those heads of those agencies, signed that document to request that Section 702 of FISA go on and be renewed before December 31st, when its temporary date comes up, they were wrong to do so. It doesn't really close down until April. They need to not vote to support it. Here's what needs to happen. We need to follow the Geneva Convention. We need to not surveil anyone unless we are at war with them, and only the president can state if we're at war with someone with the approval of Congress. So therefore, there is no one we should be surveilling right now except one country that has two countries that have threatened to kill us, and that would be Iran and North Korea. So it'd be okay to surveil them. But that would be done through the military, the NSA. It doesn't need to be done through the CIA. The CIA is America's hammer for corporations in foreign countries. That's what it has become. It is nothing more than it's part of the corporatocracy, or what did you call it the other day?
I call it
the corruptocracy?
No, the corruptocrats.
The corruptocrats. These are corruptocrats. And we thank the Millennial Report for coming up with that moniker, because it's absurd that their overt corruption isn't instantaneously indicted, convicted, and they go to jail. So when Jeff Sessions signed that, that was the first true evidence that we had that he is working against the American people.
And all these spying agencies are really, they're all working with these transnationalists that want to take over America and destroy America. I mean, they're going to be a fierce beast for us to try to tackle, because these people are employed by the groups that, I mean, we saw that in our surveillance reports that we did. This is a huge industry. We're talking about Americans who work for Reauthon, or is it Raytheon? Raytheon, excuse me. Mm-hmm. They work for Raytheon, and if we try to clamp down this activity, we're talking about Americans with jobs, but yet the jobs they hold are feeding on us, the American people. It's a crazy thing, but we've got to shut this down.
Yes, we do. And the war between the corporate intelligence and military intelligence, all corporate intelligence needs to be fired. Trump can do that. He can do that with the signing with a pen. He simply has to sign an executive order. They're all gone. And it's okay, though. We don't want that to happen yet. That won't happen until Trump wins in 2020. And then after that, 1 year into that, he can start to do extremely dramatic reconstruction of the entire federal system. Right now, we don't want the Mueller investigation to close down. We don't want Michael Horowitz to be fired. We don't want Rosenstein to be fired or McCabe. We want them to continue to show their corruption until all of America, even people who are extremely liberal, get to see who these people are. And it's coming out so clearly. So corporate intelligence corruption, well, let's look at that. Let's look at the Department of Justice, Bruce Orr, basically working for Fusion GPS, which is a corporate intelligence agency that has many ex-government employees working there, and also Glenn Simpson and his whole yellow journalism crowd from New York Times, I believe. So that group, the Podesta group, Manafort and his group, these intelligence groups, they all need to be ended. They are conducting espionage, subversion. They are lies. They're smear campaign, yellow journalism of the worst type. It's
not even journalism.
No.
It's flat out propaganda. And I'm just incensed. Look, you got Bruce Orr. He's getting a government paycheck. Hey, we taxpayers are paying him. And then he goes and he does work for a private company. Just that on its own, he should be fired. But not to mention that what he's doing is treasonous.
He's obviously the Department of Justice leak. There's no doubt about that. His wife worked for Fusion GPS and is obviously the Russian connection. So if you want Russian collusion in the election, yes, that would be Nellie Orr and her husband, Bruce Orr, and the Russians who were hired by Fusion GPS to create the Russian Trump dossier, the fake dossier, the completely 100% discredited dossier used by Comey through William Bill Priestap, the head of the counterintelligence department of the FBI, and then he used his fall guy, Larry Struck, who used a U.S. government phone, a taxpayer phone, to send 10,000 texts to his girlfriend, who was married and he's married. That is against the law. They lose their top secret security clearances, which they'd have to be doing those jobs. He can't work for the FBI anymore. He's completely compromised, and the Mueller case is closed because one of their star witnesses has been found to be not only violating the Hatch Act, which when Michael Horowitz says he's going to bring Peter Strzok up on the Hatch Act, well, that's silly. No one goes to jail for the Hatch Act, and you can't hardly prove it because Obama extended the Hatch Act so that these government agents and people working in the government, these government operatives, can be completely political now. That is the reason John Brennan turned the CIA into basically an outlet for the Muslim Brotherhood. He was more on the side of the Muslims than he was the Americans. Look at what he did while he was in office. Nothing except protect the guilty in D.C. as well as promote radical Islamic terrorism. He is the person who said, oh, there's nothing wrong with a fatwa. There's nothing wrong with jihad. That everyone has that wrong. He's supposed to be the guy fighting jihad, and yet he's coming out defending it. So the intelligence agencies need to collapse. Trump can do that later. Right now, let them all come out and show who they are. He's got nothing to hide. They have everything to hide. And it is coming out slowly, and we see every single day movement forward. And with the new tax proposal being enacted, as soon as he signs that, he will become a greater president than Ronald Reagan by far. And he will be elected in the second term, absolutely, because now the Republicans realize they need to get on the Trump train. Plus, as Trump is doing nothing more than being Trump and saying, we will follow the rule of law, you get to find out there's 264 predators in the Congress who have been covered by $17 million in hush money. You get to find out that the Awan brothers were creating one of the largest espionage groups.
It was.
And may still be.
Yes.
That the server may still, the last report I saw, the very server that they were using to shuffle things even to Pakistan when he was on vacation, and when Imran Awan was working for 80 people in the Congress, it was all being coordinated through one server in an office of a congressman who wasn't even there. And then it was being sent to an off-site server, and then from there it was going international. And he had access to Hillary's DNC server, the Democratic National Committee server. He had access to Podesta's emails. He had access to Debbie Wasserman Schultz's DNC accounts, all of the accounts for the DCCC, on and on and on, one guy. So when these things start to come out, and they are coming out, they will eventually add up to show the reason why right now we have over 40 congressmen and senators who are not running for re-election, or another group who have already left because they've been found out to be predators. Now, mind you, being a predator is what they are all about. They're predators on their own constituency. They're predators on the people who donate to them. They're predators on the U.S. Government. They're predators on we the people. So what we're seeing is beautiful. And everywhere you look, you see that Trump is winning. Matter of fact, I feel like Diamond and Silk. I want to get out my pom-poms and just do some cheering.
You're not nearly as cute, honey.
I am nowhere near as cute, nowhere near as sweet, but I am almost breathless from winning. Of course Trump is going to win with DACA. Of course Trump is going to win with the wall. Trump is going to win with North Korea. We just got through hearing what he's going to do. And, he's known he was going to do this from the beginning, and we said he would do this. It's very, very simple. All he had to get was China's permission for us to say, no, it isn't a preemptive attack. He's already sent missiles over Japan. Those missiles could have had anthrax in them. They could have had warheads in them. So North Korea has already attacked. What we need to do is blow up their missile sites, and we need to blow up their missile dumps where they keep their munitions. And then the poor people in North Korea might be able to eat. We also need to knock out their enrichment plant that creates the plutonium-239, which Obama built by giving $4.5 billion to North Korea, and all the presidents have. Anytime a country screams that they have the bomb, the nuclear bomb, they're going to blow us up, we go and give them money. Now, I want to move quickly to the next point, and that's that Iran, when Obama gave Iran $150 billion and untold amounts in cash, the amount that Iran was giving to Hezbollah, which is also Hamas, which we now hear is leaving the Palestinian areas. Hamas is leaving. Okay, I want to explain why this is happening. First off, when we gave that money to Iran, Iran raised the money that they gave yearly to Hezbollah from $200 million to $800 million. So we gave the money for the very missiles that were then given to Yemen to be shot at Saudi Arabia. We gave the money for the Iranian Guard to come into Iraq and do what Americans couldn't do, which is get ISIS, which was created by America, and Al-Qaeda, which was created by America, completely out of Iraq. Of course, we just heard many, many, many more people died in that last Battle of Mosul than anyone ever imagined. 10,000 civilians at a minimum. And that's what we had to pay for creating ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Then what happened, Hezbollah, was the long streams of supplies going into Syria to support Shiite radicals fighting in Syria. That's Hezbollah. And now we heard that Hezbollah through Hamas has basically taken over Lebanon because they have poured so much money that Barack Obama, Barry Soetoro, I like to call him his real name, that Barry Soetoro gave Iran went directly to Lebanon. That's where the next war is going to happen. Israel has already said they're going to bomb the snot out of Lebanon. Why? Because they're going to start drilling for the oil, and they're using the excuse of Hezbollah funding Hamas, and Hezbollah and Hamas both being in Lebanon. Well, guess what? They're backing off. And Hamas is backing out of Palestine because, of course, they know that when Trump came in Saudi Arabia and said, we ain't doing no more business with you if you support terrorists. That's Hezbollah, that's Hamas, that's Wahhabism. It's all of the extreme versions. So what's happening now? They are shrinking. ISIS, because we no longer gave them the Barack Obama, Barry Soetoro, $1 billion a year to support ISIS in Syria. And that wasn't what we were also giving from the Pentagon or the money directly to the moderate rebels or any one of a dozen groups that were there. We were supporting all of that. But the $1 billion directly given to ISIS, and remember, they got most of their equipment from us. We left it in Iraq. And then it just came over to Syria. So we funded ISIS completely. So when we stopped funding them, look what is happening. We are seeing Hamas pull out of what Fatah, which is the Organization for the Palestinian well, it's actually a more complicated name, but what we used to call the Palestinian Liberation Organization. It's the same one. It's the Palestinian Authority, it's called today. And Abbas, who met with Trump twice now, must have said to Hamas, get out. Okay, that's never happened. And then said to Fatah, stop this. If Hamas is out, and if Fatah is not outright radical Islamic terrorism shooting missiles into supposed Israeli land, then you can actually sit down at the table. Because why? Trump did the ultimate move. The U.S. Congress, years ago, in 1998, passed a resolution that they would move our embassy to the already existing capital of Israel, Jerusalem. Why didn't they want that to happen? Because the Palestinians say that they have Jerusalem as their capital. Well, everybody's got Jerusalem as their capital. Just go there. You'll see everyone is recognized in the old city, and everyone has their part there, and everyone is doing their religious rituals there, and everywhere you go, you have Israelis pointing at you a machine gun with the safety off with their finger on the button. So that's the reason that Jerusalem doesn't get blown up, is because it actually has a peaceful cooperation going on right now. So us moving our embassy there is simply to say, sorry folks, of course we recognize that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. And when the UN and many countries in the UN put forth resolutions, and then the Security Council actually voted saying that they were against what Trump had done, Trump didn't do it. The U.S. Congress did it. And it was a huge vote in favor of doing it. He simply followed the rules. Now, what happens? Trump has been defunding the United Nations from day one. Recently, he defunded all refugees programs. That's the largest amount of money that they get. And now, because these countries wanted to say that they don't support the United Nations making a decision, United States of America can make decisions, and tough luck, United Nations. You don't determine our political policies. You don't determine anything for us.
Get the hell out.
That's what Trump said.
Really,
no more funding for them.
If any building needs to be demolished in a legal way, it needs to be that UN building and send everybody home.
It's going to be exactly like the Climate Accord. America was going to spend $5 trillion on the Climate Accord. In the first year, I think it was $400 billion. In other words, $500 billion. So the $1 trillion debt in the budget they're arguing about, Trump saved $5 trillion in the Climate Accord. He went over and has sold over $1 trillion worth of stuff to foreign countries when he was on tours in foreign countries. The stock market has gone up over $5 trillion in assets. And trillions of dollars have been brought back in business to America. So we don't need the United Nations. We need to defund all aspects. We need to stop the World Bank. We need to stop the International Monetary Fund. We need to stop its international component, the Bank for International Settlements. We need to stop the World Trade Organization. All United Nations organizations need to end. And I'm going to make one more point before we move on, and this is very, very, very important. Logan Act, they keep saying Trump, Logan Act. No, President Obama is breaking the Logan Act by going to countries where Trump goes. He goes there later and tries to do business with them as an ex-president. That is illegal. He cannot do that. That is a violation of the Logan Act. Maybe someone will finally go to jail for it. That would be Trump. Each city that says that they want the climate accord, that they're going to participate, each political person who said that goes to jail. Violation of the Logan Act. You cannot do that. Only the president, with the approval of Congress, can create treaties. You cannot continue the climate accord. And if you did, stupid people, let me tell you what you would do. You would simply, in the first 4 years, pay money out. Because what was going to happen, because smaller countries were given exemptions. China, Russia were given exemptions. China, the worst polluter of all, was given exemptions.
It was just another way to rip off Americans.
It was a setup just like Facebook coin.
Oh gosh, let's not go there in this audio.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Carbon credits were going to become the new international currency. No one wants to talk about this. America was going to pour $5 trillion into a new currency called carbon credits. And we were going to be in debt until we paid $5 trillion. And then each year we were going to have to pay more for every single smokestack that didn't have scrubbers on it, and so on and so forth.
That's history. We did. Thank goodness Trump is here, and we didn't have to go that path. And what people don't realize is how much wealth is going to be brought back to America. And this is just going to be an incredible period of prosperity. Although we do need to get over this hump about the central banks and their out of control printing of their Federal Reserve note. We really need to go back to a sound money in the United States and get rid of the Federal Reserve. I mean, out. Cut out the central bank criminals. All the way to the Rothschilds. Now that Americans are awake and we see the path to victory, we are not taking hostages. We are going to go all the way and get our country back.
And when we talk about central bank, go and look at our intelligence reports. When we say Rothschilds, we mean the Warburgs, we mean the Rockefellers, we mean the married family members of the Rothschilds.
We mean the Queen of England, the Knights of Malta. We look at the Vatican, all of it. It's not conspiracy theory, believe me. Miss Betsy is not a conspiracy theorist. She is a realist.
85 of the 125 central banks are owned by the Rothschild family. And if you follow the way that new central banks are created, they are created the second that the war is over.
Listen,
there's a war just before a central bank is started.
Yeah. And they want to have their own cryptocurrency. They want to call it the Fed coin. Oh my gosh. Do they understand that nobody out here with any reasonable brain power would buy a Fed coin?
Oh, that would be the crookedest thing.
And if Congress ever approved that as a legal tender in here, no, we'll have to stop that.
Trump's tax cut program is going to launch the U.S. economy into space like a rocket. It will not be able to be stopped. What has happened is they've attempted to pull the stops out on everything to stop Trump. Can't stop Trump. Why? Because what he's doing is right. And it should have been done a long time ago, and all he has to do is the opposite of what Obama and Bush and Clinton did, and follow the law, follow the rules, put America first, put jobs first. So what is going to happen is very simple. Everyone who gets a few $1,000s in their pocket from this tax cut and credits for their children and all these other things, from all walks of life, from making $0 to infinite dollars, it doesn't matter. Everybody gets a tax cut. Everybody likes a tax cut. The reason the Dems thought it was Armageddon, it's Armageddon for the Dems. It is. The Democrats stood against giving their constituencies a tax cut. They put the noose around their neck and jumped off the gallows.
Closing comments?
Well, I always have closing comments. Let's just make sure that we don't end the Mueller investigation. We want that to keep unraveling until Mueller himself goes down.
So he's standing there buck buck naked in the public eye. Everything's exposed. We see the swamp creature he is.
And he's going to take down a bunch of others. He's going to try right now to let Michael Horowitz do the fake white hat move of supposedly demoting some of the criminals. Wrong. That's low-hanging fruit, and they got out of being prosecuted for much, much bigger crimes, which they did commit, and everyone knows they committed them. They admit it themselves. We have all the evidence. So what is really going on? We want to see Michael Horowitz, his investigation with his stupid Office of Inspector General, is it a Twitter site?
Well, they opened up a tweet site and a website where they're going to be putting their official reports and investigations and things out there. It was opened up, I believe, in May 2017. Yes, that's correct.
Completely insane stupidity. Anyone who would believe that that is good doesn't understand that Michael Horowitz is a very, very evil man. We have done an expose on him, and what is really happening is he's doing what you can't do.
No, he's got a lot of people tricked that he's the white,
Right.
the knight in shining white armor coming to save the day with his million-page report on the corruption.
You cannot give out reports on an IG current investigation. That is illegal. That is why.
So what's the point of a Twitter for him?
That is how he exonerates Mueller's big mistakes that are coming out into the public, like Bruce Orr, Nellie Orr, like Peter and Lisa, like McCabe.
Was it his office that leaked that information? Do we know who leaked that out? All this stuff about Strzok and Orr and
Michael
all that?
Horowitz released it, which is illegal.
Oh, that's right, he released it.
In other words, those people cannot be.
How could you release it if it's an ongoing investigation?
Those people can no longer
to me,
be
that's a
prosecuted.
leak. Yeah.
He leaked it so they can't be prosecuted.
But that's his lawyer way of doing it.
And he didn't
because-
leak it. He released it.
Yes, he released it, but we're going to be going into this in the next month in January about how the legal system has been weaponized against us. So that's how they've taken our Constitution and ripped it apart with all their legalese. So they create these U.S. Patriot Acts, and they make these big documents full of their legal jargon, and then they shove it down our throat. And then when you get to a court, we can't get our constitutional rights enforced because these attorneys and judges stand in the way. The whole system has got to just be done away with and restarted. Reboot.
I mean, look at Mueller's investigation. One of the impaneled judges was a FISA court judge and had to recuse himself before the sentencing of Michael Flynn. Now, when you recuse a judge after the case happened, then the case is over.
Well, then you're concerned that things are catching up with me. This happened catching up with me.
This happened with Judge Leon for the Fusion case. It's happened now twice with Judge Chutkan for the Fusion lawsuits, the lawsuits brought against Fusion and Christopher Steele. So you see from above, as you're saying, these judicial actions. But the sad part is that the IG report on the FISA court should have ended it. There should be no more 702. There is no justification. The president himself can extend it for a year to do warrantless investigations of anyone that we are that we are having conflicts with, that he deems we're having conflicts with. It can be year by year renewed and approved by the president for only what it is supposed to be used for. Right now, everyone wants to ignore the fact that we're all surveilled completely. That is illegal. Everyone wants to ignore the content of WikiLeaks because they were supposedly came by spurious methods. Insanity that we are ignoring uranium one. We're ignoring.
We aren't out here. We're not. And if they think that we're asleep like we used to be, got news for them.
Well, that's the whole point. So here's my suggestion to you, Mr. President. In Section 702, you don't need it. You can extend it and allow it by presidential executive order year by year. Take away the power of surveillance from the 17 intelligence agencies that don't need it. Only one agency needs it. That's the NSA, and that's only if we're at war with somebody. So yes, surveil Iran, surveil North Korea, and stop the nonsense of thinking that because there's the long war of terrorism going on that you get to surveil everyone because you consider everybody to be a terrorist until proven innocent. That's what the U.S. Patriot Act did. That's what the U.S. Freedom Act did. That's what Section 702 says. Basically, everyone is guilty, and we're going to surveil you whether you like it or not. There were millions, tens of millions of Americans swept up with one single FISA court warrant that was properly issued. Okay? By accident, tens of millions of Americans, think that through. Now, who do they surveil? Every single foreign person is surveilled. So are Americans swept up in it? Probably every American is swept up in it to begin with, and that's the ones that are supposed to be legal with going against international foreign actors, basically war actors. So we don't need it. We need to stop it. James Clapper needs to be put into jail for doing it. Rogers needs to be put into jail. They all know it's against the law. They come out and they lie. They say it's not going on. They all need to be prosecuted. This is what the Mueller investigation is about. IG, looking at the Department of Justice and that particular investigation, is going to be ignored exactly like the FISA court. IG, completely ignored. And then you get a Jeff Sessions, a Pompeo, and all these intelligence leaders stating that 701 needs to go on. No, it does not. You cannot prove to me, and I read the entire IG report, that there was anything that was gathered that was of any use whatsoever. If we want to, we can surveil any enemy. That's part of the Geneva Convention. We don't need these fake rules created by Obama that have been extended by the NDAA and the FISA Court 702 and by all this nonsense. We don't need any of that. We're not at war, folks. Those are only active and should only be active during war. And American people should not have 17 U.S. intelligence agencies at war against every single American. That is illegal. Close it down, Mr. Trump.